So can Milei actually make good on his promises to use the dollar as the country's official currency and kill Argentina's central bank? And could he at some point even follow the path of El Salvador, which was the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender in 2021? And what could all of this mean for Bitcoin and its adoption? Well, here to answer that is Cory Klippsten, CEO of Swan Bitcoin. So, Cory, we have the leader of the 8th largest country in the world, the second biggest economy in South America, saying central banks are a scam and that Bitcoin is the reaction to that scam. What do you make of his comments?
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to see someone elected to one of the top 20 countries in the world to lead it. This is a momentous occasion. This is a much bigger deal on the global stage than what happened in El Salvador, although El Salvador has gone a lot deeper and is special in its own way. This really launches this idea of central banking being a scam, as Milei said, but at least being unfair and at least being maybe not all that people previously understood it to be. Not your viewers, of course, but a lot of folks around the world don't understand what is going on with the money printing and the Cantillon effect, and that it's the cause of inflation and credit burst cycles and things like that. So I think it's fascinating to have someone that is this fluent in Austrian economics and in libertarian principles and really understands the root of much of what's wrong in the global system today, and in particular in local systems with crappy local fiat currencies kind of used as tools of tyranny and profligacy and just cronyism. And he wants to uproot that in his own country. And I think it may end up being quite the example for a lot of other countries around the world.
Right. I mean, it is very fascinating to start to see people wake up to the idea that central banking is, in fact, a scam. And he is an economist. Fun fact, one of his dogs is actually called Milton Friedman, which I thought was very amusing. Somehow I retained that little useless bit of information about Argentina's new president there. But one of the big reasons that he won this election, Cory, is because of Argentina's economy. It's such a disaster. And as the expression goes, it's the economy stupid. And Argentina is currently undergoing its 5th hyperinflation since 1975. Inflation currently running at 143% per year. And this was one of the richest countries in the world at some point. I mean, at some point, the peso was actually backed by gold. Clearly went off that back in 1929, and that's seen the economy fall apart. Certainly that accelerated that process. And he has said that he's very committed to the reconstruction of Argentina. In his victory speech, he said, "Today begins the end of Argentina's decline, and the model of decadence has come to an end." And of course, saying that you want to cut spending and cutting about 11 government departments is a huge thing for a politician to say. We'll see if he'll be able to follow through on that, but he has reiterated his position that he wants to shut down Argentina's central bank. Very recently, he said that is non-negotiable. And this came after reports that this promise would be dropped because of the exit of a number of key advisors from his transition team. And we know that politicians like to make a lot of promises and then not necessarily follow through. Before we get onto the Bitcoin side, I mean, is it even possible for him to kill the central bank? Can you have no central bank? What would that even look like for Argentina?
Yeah, so I admittedly am very unclear on whether the peso can continue in any fashion with the central bank being dead. What I have done some digging into is, and just talking to folks in my network, including some that are pretty well placed down there, is just to understand what would happen if they did try to dollarize. And what seems to be what everyone kind of is consensus on is that if you dollarized, you would see a dramatic, even faster fall in the value of the peso. So you would see something like a very quick 4 or 5x essentially of the dollar's value versus the peso. And so there's a bit of brinksmanship and maybe a bit of a race potentially to try to let that run before it can be blamed on him. And there may also be, right after he takes power and starts to do a few things, there may be a large incentive from his opposition to try to pin it on him and make it look as if the speculators are attacking the peso and they're doing it because of the election of Milei. But regardless, what you have is a lot of pressure against dollarizing because you have so much short-term credit that needs to roll over. And this is businesses, large and small, and also families and people that have credit, short-term loans that they've taken out that they need to roll over. And it's going to be a lot of pressure on them. If you dollarize, a lot of people would just be, in dire straits. That short-term pain, probably something on the order of kind of what happened for the first few years post-Brexit, maybe even more exaggerated than that, versus what happened in the UK.
Right. Well, I mean, he has said that he wants to kill Argentina's central bank, move, which will be the end of the peso, as you just discussed, and move to the dollar. I mean, his intention is to move to the dollar. And Argentina has, I believe, like the second largest number of dollars in circulation than any other country. And in terms of actual like physical dollar notes that people have and are keeping, in boxes in their cupboards or under their beds, that they're hodling dollars as a store of value. But the question is, if you do go to the US dollar, you're kind of substituting one central bank with another, because then you're subject to the whims of the US central bank, to the Fed. So how does that work?
Yeah, you're just basically saying, hey, this is less bad, essentially. But, you're still going to have the melting ice cube of the dollar losing value, and you're subject to the whims of the Fed and the Treasury and all of their policies, and not even being able to have any influence on that because it's half a world away and they don't care about you, right? So that is kind of the issue with dollarizing. But it's definitely a steadier platform than you're on with a local tyranny-led crappy fiat currency in a smaller market. And it also is a half step toward Bitcoin, which is, I think, where a lot of these countries will end up as the century advances. The next 2-3 decades, I think you'll see a lot of countries full on Bitcoinized.